and gentlemen, welcome to the first SWBL podcast series called Origins. This has been a podcast that I've wanted to get off the ground for quite some time now. And the first group that I wanted to do this Origins podcast with was, of course, the SWBL founding fathers. Now, originally, I only thought that I was going to get Kevin and Brett, who are obviously local, but we are so excited to also be joined by the fourth founding father, the one that's been lesser known because he hasn't been around in a while, but we are so excited to be joined by Andrew Leicht as well. So Brett, Kevin, Andrew, say hello to the people.
Hello.
Hello, people. Yes. All right, very good. We're going to get to each of them in just a moment with some questions and things like that too. But, I'm going to start with Andrew. Andrew, you had a 6-year career with the SWBL, and you also came back into the franchise era 1 year just to watch and observe, and we haven't seen you quite since then. But we are excited that you're joining us for today. But Andrew, can you give us your earliest wiffle ball memory? And before you give us our memory, I'll let you think about it for a second, but your earliest wiffle memory, not just SWBL, but earliest wiffle memory. And when I give you a second to think about it, this is kind of how Origins is going to go. It's going to be a podcast where anybody in the league can record themselves doing this Origins podcast, and we're going to talk about the earliest memories, their first season in the SWBL, their favorite memories from the SWBL, whatever it might be. So for you, as one of the founding fathers of our league, Andrew, what is one of your earliest wiffle ball memories, maybe outside of the SWBL?
Well, I remember season 1. I was teamed up with Ken Shippey, and he was supposed to be the person carrying our team, but he was terrible. That's like the thing I remember from season 1. He really let me down. We didn't play so well. And I remember Nick Meyer taking a lot of pitches. We didn't have a strike zone back then.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the no strike zone later for sure.
We would just trade places at first base. No ghost runner, so we would just single, trade places at first base. It's a more exciting game these days. You've stepped it up.
Yes, and the rules have definitely changed for sure. And Brett and Kevin, I know you're kind of more involved now in the scene, and both of you are teaming up this year for the first time in a while with the Expos. And we are excited to see that partnership formed there as well. But Brett, what is one of your earliest wiffle ball memories, not the SWBL, but one of your earliest wiffle ball memories before that?
Oh, man. So obviously I remember us sitting around that summer trying to figure out what to do over the summer. And we couldn't, I think we had the wiffle ball and the stuff out. There was no fence. There was nothing up. So we were just kind of tossing around. We're like, what is there to do? I remember thinking that, hey, let's just play a couple games of wiffle ball. We'll form some teams. I remember us going up to Home Depot to get that orange fence. Mm-hmm. And I remember us doing the construction on the field. I distinctly remember recording and doing construction on the field and talking about it as we did. I don't know why that just kind of stuck with me till now.
And one of you guys keep talking about the SWBL, but I think there's even before the SWBL, there have been memories before. And Kevin, you may have been there with me when we were doing this too. But Brett, you used to go to Lake Taneycomo with your family, and we had the blue bat. And that blue bat is actually sitting in our garage right now, still currently. And this blue bat you would bring, it wasn't the yellow wiffle ball bat, but it was a blue bat that you would bring. And we would play with whether the Boyds or the Kennys, whoever would be there at Lake Taneycomo. And we would play some wiffle ball. Even before the SWBL got started, that was one of my memories as well. But Kevin, do you have any early memories that aren't SWBL related?
Yeah, I forgot about that Lake Taneycomo. I'm glad you brought that up because we definitely did play a lot of wiffle ball there. And I think back in the day, I used to play a lot of wiffle ball with my brother. We played this game where we put like different targets around our parents' backyard and got different amount of points for like hitting it in the target, stuff like that.
Yeah. There's always different games, and that's the beauty of wiffle ball is you can really have any game really that you want to play with the yellow bat and the white ball. Andrew, I'm going to go back to you. Andrew, do you remember the first name of our league when we started it? We started the league in 2003, and a little trivia question. Do you remember the name? It wasn't always Skibbe Wiffleball League. There was another name of it. Do you remember?
Summer Wiffleball League. It was still the SWBL.
Summer. It was Summer Wiffleball League, and it was actually spelled with an H, wiffle ball with an H, if you guys remember that as well. There are many memories of those big posters we used to make every single year, and it would have all the stats and all the standings and everything from that season. And it says Summer Wiffleball with an H League. And when we were picking a new name, we wanted to stick with the S, and we had a vote on Facebook for people to join, and they could vote on which one they wanted. There was Summer Wiffleball League with no H. There was St. Louis Wiffleball League and Skibbe Wiffleball League, and ultimately it came down to, well, Skibbe's backyard, so Skibbe Wiffleball League. But yes, it was Summer Wiffleball League. And Brett, do you remember, trivia question for you, how was our first season one, how was our league teams formed? Do you remember who formed them?
Yeah, I do remember that one. That's a
I
good
was not a part of that.
You were all sitting, I think it was in my basement or in my house. My dad just came down and you were like, hey, let's have your dad pick teams. And so he just kind of picked random teams, and you're going to go into this whole thing. Oh, he put Brett and Jeff together. It was not fair.
Actually,
God, but we won anyway.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's how it all came down to my dad picking the teams that you thought were unfair, but then it turned out okay for you.
It did, and your dad was our baseball coach at the time, because we were all still in middle school. It was 8th grade. So he was still our baseball coach with, I believe we were the Beaners back then. Was that our 8th grade?
Yeah.
And Kevin,
our logo. I still have that jersey somewhere.
I think I do too. So Kevin made the baseball team, or Kevin made the logo for the baseball team. And then your dad coached, obviously. And we had him make the teams. And the teams for season one were obviously, as Andrew said, you had Ken Shippey and Andrew. And I haven't talked to Ken since the high school reunion. I know you guys all bailed on me, but I was at the high school reunion. Ken was there too. We talked wiffle ball for a little bit. And Kevin Wiethuchter was with Andrew's brother, John, and they did not do very well either in the league. And it really came down to just two teams. And it was Nick and I and Brett and Jeff. And Kevin, how was it being on a team with John Leicht back then, and you're still on a team with John Leicht now? Is that something you guys talk about a lot? Is that a memory you guys still remember when you go back to it, or is it just so far beyond your mind you have no idea about it anymore?
I think John and I are meant to be on a team together, so we're gonna continue that way until we decide to retire, I think.
There you go.
He's been a great, and he usually steps up and helps when I can't be there for whatever reason, but I really appreciate everything that he does for our team.
Yeah. And John he's one of the greater comeback stories in our league for a long time. He had a really good returning season with the Expos that first year back. And Andrew, I'm going to go back to you. One of my favorite teams that I ever played on was the first year of the 3-team era, or 3-player era, excuse me. So we had 3 players on a team. One of my favorite teams was I was with both Light brothers. It was me, you, and Peter. And that year, I think we got like 2nd or 3rd place. Like, we got pretty close. We didn't win, but also I remember that our entire team, for some reason, the awards at B, the people who voted for the awards, which I think might have been the 4 of us, or maybe just me, I don't know. But I remember all 3 of us got a Gold Hands Award. And maybe you don't know this, but I'm sure you might know, because this is your only award in the SWBL, is this Gold Hands Award that year, Andrew. So do you remember that year at all? Do you remember how great of a fielding team we were?
Yeah, I remember playing with Peter. I remember playing with you. Yeah, I think we should have done better than we did. I think that was probably Peter's worst season.
If he would have stepped up and did better, we would have been much better for sure. I think that we can blame that season.
He's his own worst. He's his own worst critic, so
we can blame that season on Peter, but it definitely should have been one. And out of all of us here, Brett has the most championships. So Brett with 4 championships in his career, and I have 3, and Kevin and Andrew have yet to have one, but I'm sure, the time will come for Kevin and Andrew. Andrew will come back and maybe be a part of a franchise, get a couple at bats in, and maybe get on that trophy. But, it is Brett, the first season, I had to talk about it, it's origins. We got to talk about season 1. It was a 2-day final, and I'm sure you remember this 2-day final. We had to stop because of darkness, and Jeff couldn't come on day one, so Blake actually played with you on day one and against Nick and I, and you guys were winning after you had Blake. So day one, you had Blake, and it was you guys were winning by a certain amount, and then we came back the next day to finish the championship for season one, and Jeff could make it, which you would gotta believe, would have helped you out because Blake was still this scrawny little kid. He wasn't the powerhouse that he is now. So Jeff Bertram comes back, and he was arguably the best left-handed hitter in our league ever. And then you guys screwed the pooch, and Nick Meyer and myself came and we took that home. Does that still haunt you to this day, Brett? Or, do you really want that fifth championship?
I smell a conspiracy, Brett. I smell a conspiracy.
I told, I initially said he was going to bring this up, and I knew it was. I mean, of course, it comes up anytime we talk about season one. Doesn't matter if we've just mentioned, season one was in this year. This Sam butts in. He's, do you know that you were with Jeff and you guys were so good. But yeah, I mean, if I would have known, it would have gone for 18 more years, and I could have had one more championship, of course. So, yeah, I mean, but that first season we were just like, whatever, yep. We'll play a year, and unluckily we had to play 2 days, and it got too dark, and Blake and I were kicking ass, and then Jeff came back, and Nick decided to just not swing, and Sam just started hitting bombs.
He had already decided that.
And that was it. The rest is history. So,
speaking of all of these things you guys keep talking about, we had back in season one, for everybody that doesn't know, we had no strike zone. So it was literally pitch to hit. You were going for contact no matter what. We didn't have walks, and we had strikeouts, but it had to be a swing strikeout on all three, which was pretty rare. But, we weren't as good back then, little eighth graders trying to get used to the ball and the bat and a few things here. But, Kevin and Brett, I know you still play, and Andrew, you've played through a couple eras as well. But thinking back from that season one, I'll go around the horn if you guys have anything to say, if anybody wants to start. I'll start with Kevin. And Kevin, what is one rule now in our game we play now that you wish we would have started from the beginning? So I'll give you an example. For myself, the rule that I wish we would have had, we did not count in stats that season one. We didn't count singles because there was too many of them. So we never counted singles, which always messes me up because anybody who played in that first season, when I do stats, I have to go back in and I have to change the batting averages manually to cut out the singles and the at-bats from that season to kind of put it together. So it kind of stinks for stats purposes when I'm doing career stats, but we never counted singles. So Kevin, what's a rule that we play with now that you wish was implemented back from the beginning?
I know I've said this a while ago, but I still think this should be in play. We need to have a slip and slide from first to second base, and maybe from third to home as well. I think that would have very entertaining.
It would have spiced up season one for sure, with it there. And we had all grass back then, so it would have been slippy and slidey. So what about you, Brett? Any rules now that you wish we would have started with from the beginning when we formed the league?
I mean, I like the pitcher's poison rule just because it gets things moving, gets people out, and not single after single. But I also am going to give a shout out to Blake here. I think we should put bells on the bases so you can tell when people hit the base and when they catch it, and you know what's happening.
Yeah. And Andrew, I know we talk about this, this forming this, or at least I do, and I think about this a lot, but do you remember anything from that day? Like Brett kind of talked about a little bit, we were sitting around and playing that wiffle together. But I mean, I specifically remember us sitting on my parents' brick little stone wall, when we go in there. I remember specifically saying let's start a league when we put this together. But could you ever imagine back then in 2003 as an eighth grader, Andrew, that we would still be playing 18 years later and it looks like it's going to go into the future and beyond?
No, I don't think I honestly could. It's kind of incredible, but I do. I didn't until Brett said it, but I remember going to Home Depot. I don't know who drove us because we weren't 16.
I don't know either.
Probably Brett's mom took us to Home Depot to buy that roll of orange fence.
We built that wall too in left field with a bunch of plywood, and I don't think anybody ever hit it over.
I don't think that was first season. We did that because
That wasn't the first season?
So viewers at home can recognize how unfair the first year was. You had Brett Spencer and you had Jeff Bertram, who was the only left-handed bat in the league, with like a 55-foot fence in left field because of the bushes.
Yeah.
That was, and no strike zone. So it was
Yeah.
all offense back then. That was just,
Yeah.
I don't, how they didn't win the championship. Brett has 4, but he should definitely have at least 5 because that's crazy. I did appreciate back in the day you could rob home runs on unlimited steps. You could hop the fence, take 5 steps, catch it, and it would be an out.
You could run around the fence if you wanted to, and you could sit at the foul pole.
Yeah, people would stand at the foul pole and sprint around real quick and try to get.
And we broke that fence. I don't know how many times, I don't know how many staples we had to put back in that fence stakes because Ken especially would just try to jump over the fence, and it would.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Andrew. Back in the day, we had wooden stakes and a staple gun, and we would put those orange things, we didn't even have the zip ties back then. It was a stapler, and it was just a lot of work, and you're right, it broke a lot. So that's one thing now that with the fence we have now, it bends, it doesn't break, and that's one thing I wish we would have had back then because we spent so much money on the orange construction fence and the wooden stakes that kept breaking. It was probably pretty dangerous with the wooden stakes, let's be honest, but it's crazy to me to think about that this is still going on. And obviously I'm wearing a hat with a logo from the SWBL. It's just something that you would never think of in your life, but it's one thing that has brought back our friendship and our community and our families together for so many years. And I know we haven't seen you in a while, Andrew, but coming up in 2 years is season 20. And the goal obviously is to get to season 20 and beyond. And there's been a few things that I've kind of been thinking about already for season 20. We want to do a season 20 t-shirt, and we want to do some other things that really kind of highlight how this league's been going for 2 decades. But one thing that we're throwing around is doing an alumni game and inviting back players, on the opening day, or on a Saturday or Sunday evening, whatever it might be, instead of doing maybe a skills competition or a part of the skills competition, doing an alumni game and having people like you or Jeff Bertram and Andy Oldenburg and people that haven't played in a really long time, maybe invite Ken Shippey back and Nick Meyer, having those guys come back from season 1. Is that something you would be interested in? And I want to put that out to you now because we would love to have you back, Andrew, for that season 20. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll grab Craig Boyd. We'll come down from Chicago.
Yes, and Craig, yes. You got to there's so many people that are a part of this history of our league that it's too bad that we can't see you guys every once in a while. And I know we see your family, Andrew, when we see Peter and John and the rest of your family that come out. And we see Grant Boyd and all the Boyds still. So we just don't see Craig and we don't see you. And you guys are a huge part of our history. And I can't thank the 3 of you enough for being on that brick wall with me that day, because you really started something that, let's be honest, we're all 31, 32 years old, and this has been going on for 18 years. More than half of our lives have been spent, kind of developing this league that has been such a huge part of our lives. And I didn't think my life would be defined by a plastic ball and a plastic bat. And it's not fully defined by that, but it truly is ingrained in our culture. I even have the coordinates to home plate on my arm forever. So it's just something that will always be with me. So I can't thank the 3 of you enough. And speaking of which, and maybe I'll start with Brett with this, let's have a little debate here. And this is going to be a debate that might not be, we might all have the same opinion, but other people in the league might debate differently. But I'm going to start this debate and see if people can respond on Twitter after we post this. But let's have a Hall of Fame debate. Are you ready? Should Andrew and Kevin be locks for the Hall of Fame because they were league founders on the brick wall? Brett, we'll start with you.
Yeah. If you have people nowadays, think of the MLB. Who started the Major League Baseball? If you had players nowadays voting for good players currently and then past players that started the league, they may not take it as seriously as it should be, but this is almost 20 years later, and us 4 basically set up this league, and everyone has benefited from it. So I don't see how you can't have Andrew and Kevin both in at this time. I think it's just it should be a lock.
Yeah, when we made the requirements for the Hall of Fame to be nominated to, it's 7 years requirement. And Andrew, you only have 6 years under your belt. And, the commissioner can write in different people, and I have written you in before, but do you think there's ever a chance that you could make it back for one more season, even if it's just a couple of bats on a team, but one more season, just so you can be Hall of Fame eligible every single time and have your name on that ballot? What do you think? One more season, Andrew?
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'll leave the door open to anything.
Okay. And Kevin,
I know a couple of team captains pretty well, so
I'm sure you do.
I think I could slot my way in somehow, some way.
I think for sure the Expos, you might know that guy, and obviously the Brewers captain too. But even the Royals, we're always looking for a player to fill in once game or something like that for something. So you never know. You got some people in this call that might help you out to get that last year of eligibility. And Kevin, I'm going to you, Kevin. Mm-hmm. It's been a rough go past couple of years, and as someone who counts the votes, and I don't want to reveal too much, I can tell it's been very close the past couple of years, and it's strict guidelines to get into this Hall of Fame, and I will say it has been close with the voting process. But is there anything you want to say to the voters? Anything you want to say one more time? You are eligible. You've been playing this game for over a decade. You have been there from season 1. You are the captain of the Expos. I mean, is there anything else you want to say to the voters out there as we head into season 18?
Yeah, I just feel like I'm underappreciated in this league, and I think all those millennials that play need to pay their respects to myself and Andrew as well.
Wait, Kevin, we sure were you born? All those millennials.
the Gen Z. But yeah,
they might look a little older, but come on.
There's strict guidelines for people to get in. I get the players, but I think the founding fathers are a different thing altogether. There should not be guidelines. They should be in.
Brett has talked many times about the 4 of us getting golden or yellow jackets to wear for season 20. All of us can have like the yellow jackets. So maybe yes, yeah, with the wiffle ball logo, on the panel. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
Blazers, and maybe this year Kev will get cards and we'll pass them out like Andrew Leicht and Kevin Wiethuchter Hall of Fame. Right, and then
once all 4 of us are in, then Brett's company can make us those jackets, and we'll trounce around in them for many days for sure.
Brett, yes, I need you to print some election signs we could put up in the front yard where we park our cars at.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Do that. Vote for Kevin. Vote for Andrew. That sounds good.
Yeah, park them all. Put them all down Ridgemont too, so all those people know exactly what's going on. Yeah. So, guys, I can't thank you enough for coming on this call with me. And if there's one more thing I can leave us with in this podcast is season 18 is kind of up in the air, which is kind of scary. All this COVID-19 stuff, we are obviously Skyping, and most of the time I do a podcast in person with people and I can talk and converse with them. But obviously we're in 4 different places, making sure we're social distancing. But it may affect our wiffle ball season depending on how long this goes. And my hope is that for all of you out there watching, that we can obviously find some way to get season 18 off the ground. The last resort has been talked about moving it to Labor Day, which is another 4-day weekend in September. So hopefully give us a little more time. But obviously my hope is that we can have this still going on in Memorial Day weekend, keep that tradition alive, keep everybody's travel plans the same. But is there any words of wisdom or words of encouragement to everybody you want to give to the wiffle ball community, or maybe just a piece of advice from an old league founding father? You guys have been there from the beginning. Is there anything you want to say to these younger guys, or anything you just want to say to the wiffle world out there? Brett, we'll start with you.
Not particularly. I mean, I think for season 20 it would be sweet if everyone came back like you were saying, which would be 2022. Is that right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So Andrew, Memorial Day weekend 2022, you have plans now. So
yeah,
we'll see you then. But for the younger guys, I mean, it's fun to get together with everyone. We have a good time hanging out, drinking. We're glad everyone can come and play.
All right, Andrew, back to you. Is there anything you want to say to the league or say from a founding father's perspective for anybody?
Don't take yourselves too seriously.
Kevin?
I'm all good.
All good. I appreciate you guys coming on, and like you said, there's so much family and friends and community involved with this. And Andrew said it perfectly. Don't take yourself too seriously. It's not so much about the winning, and it never has been. For many of us, it's always fun to joke about championships, and always fun for us to talk about that. But some of my favorite moments in SWBL are having mimosas with Brett on Saturdays and going to the social nights on Friday nights and just having that camaraderie before the competition. And this origin story and this origin podcast, I think, will be a cool podcast for everybody to kind of talk about their greatest memories with SWBL and also with wiffle ball in general. But this game truly has changed a lot of our lives. I know I can speak for myself when it has drastically changed my life, but for many of us, I think anybody involved in the SWBL, you have a piece of that, a piece of your heart always goes out to this game that we all love. So, boys, I thank you so much for being there on that day in 8th grade in 2003. And I appreciate you jumping on this call and being the first Origins podcast for this new podcast series. If you are interested in hosting an Origins podcast and talking about your SWBL experiences or just how you got started in wiffle ball in general, make sure to reach out to us on Twitter or email us at skibbewiffleball@gmail.com, and you can record yourself, and we'll put it out there for the world to see. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us. Andrew, thanks so much for being here. We love seeing your face. And Brett, thanks so much as always.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you.
All right,